In the heart of Benin City, Nigeria, Manbo Gaga was born into a world filled with hardship. His father, a local fisherman, was a man of modest means who toiled daily in the murky waters to provide for his family. However, fate dealt a cruel blow when Mambo's father died mysteriously when he was just 2 years old, leaving a gaping void in the family's life. Hekahete, Mambo's mother, was left to pick up the pieces. She was a woman of indomitable spirit, yet the weight of the world seemed to rest heavily on her shoulders. Hekahete's hands, once soft and gentle, became rough and calloused from the endless hours of work she endured to support her son. She took on any job she could find, no matter how menial or exhausting. From washing clothes and cleaning houses to selling goods at the bustling Oba market. Despite the grinding poverty, Hekahete showered Manbo with love and care. She would often sit by the flickering light of an oil lamp, telling him stories of their ancestors and the rich history of the Benin Kingdom, hoping to instill a sense of pride and resilience in her young son. Manbo listened intently, his wide eyes reflecting the dreams and aspirations his mother had for him, dreams that seemed almost impossible in their harsh reality. Hekahete's dedication to Manbo's upbringing was unwavering. She ensured he attended the local primary school, believing education was the key to a better future. Manbo was a bright and curious child, quick to grasp new concepts and eager to learn. However, the pangs of hunger often distracted him, as Hekahete's meager earnings could barely keep food on their table. Many nights, Manbo went to bed with an empty stomach, the gnawing hunger a constant reminder of their dire circumstances. The other children at school noticed Mambo's worn-out clothes and tattered shoes. While some mocked him, others pitied him, but Manbo remained resilient, fueled by his mother's unyielding hope. He excelled in his studies despite the odds, his mind a beacon of potential that shone through the darkness of his impoverished existence. As Manbo grew older, he became acutely aware of the sacrifices his mother made. He watched as Hekahete's health began to deteriorate, her once vibrant spirit dimming under the weight of her ceaseless labor. The realization of their fragile existence weighed heavily on Manbo, filling him with a mix of determination and desperation. He vowed to change their circumstances, to lift his mother out of poverty and give her the life she deserved. As the sun rose each day over Benin City, Hekahete was already awake, her hands busy with the first of many tasks. Hekahete's first job of the day was usually laundry. She would travel to the homes of the more affluent residents of Benin, collecting piles of clothes to wash by hand. Each piece of fabric that she scrubbed and rinsed represented a step towards feeding her son. Her fingers, raw and pruned from hours in soapy water, moved with practiced efficiency. She took pride in her work, knowing that her efforts were all for Manbo. Once the laundry was done and hung out to dry, Hekahete would head to the marketplace. The Oba market was a labyrinth of stalls and vendors, each vying for the attention of potential customers. Hekahete had a small spot where she sold vegetables she had grown in a tiny patch of land behind their house. The patch was barely enough to sustain them, but Hekahete made it work, often bartering with other vendors to get a fair price or trade goods. At the market, Hekahete's keen bargaining skills came to the fore. The market was also where she built connections, forging relationships with other women who were also struggling to make ends meet. They shared tips, resources, and sometimes even pooled their money to buy in bulk, hoping to get better deals. By midday, Hekahete would have earned a few naira, just enough to buy some basic necessities. A little rice, a few pieces of fish, and some vegetables. Her earnings were meager, but every penny was precious. She often skipped meals herself to ensure Manbo had enough to eat, a sacrifice she made without hesitation. Afternoons saw Hekahete taking on various other jobs, from cleaning houses to working as a casual laborer on construction sites. These tasks were grueling, especially under the harsh sun, but Hekahete never complained. She would return home late in the evening, her body aching and exhausted, but her spirit unbroken. She greeted Manbo with a tired smile and whatever food she could prepare from the day's earnings. Hekahete's struggle was not just physical but emotional as well. She carried the burden of being both mother and father to Manbo, providing him with all the love and guidance he needed. Her heart ached when she saw other children with their fathers, knowing that Manbo had been deprived of that bond. Yet, she never let her sorrow show, masking it with a determined smile and a gentle touch. The community recognized Hekahete's resilience. Neighbors often admired her fortitude, and some even offered help when they could. Yet, pride and a deep sense of independence made Hekahete reluctant to accept charity. She wanted to earn her way, to show Manbo the value of hard work and dignity. The turning point came during his senior secondary school year 3, a critical period that determined a student's future in Nigeria. The final exams, known as the West African Senior School Certificate Examination, were approaching. These exams were essential for any student aspiring to attend university or secure a decent job. For Manbo, passing these exams was the key to unlocking a future beyond the cycle of poverty. Hekahete, his mother, was well aware of the significance of these exams. She doubled her efforts, working even longer hours and taking on more jobs in an attempt to save enough money to cover the exam fees. Her health began to deteriorate visibly. The lines on her face deepened, and her body grew weaker. Yet, she pressed on, driven by her unwavering love for her son and the hope that he would achieve a better life. Despite Hekahete's relentless toil, the money she managed to save was not enough. The cost of the exam fees, combined with the necessity of buying textbooks and other study materials, was beyond their reach. Manbo, seeing his mother's sacrifices and the toll it took on her, was racked with guilt and frustration. He felt the weight of their situation pressing down on him, a burden that grew heavier with each passing day. In the weeks leading up to the exams, Manbo's anxiety intensified. He tried to concentrate on his studies, but the constant worry about their financial predicament made it difficult. Nights were sleepless as he lay awake, contemplating the future that seemed to slip further away with each ticking second. The fear of disappointing his mother, who had given so much for his education, gnawed at his heart. The deadline for paying the exam fees arrived, and with it, a crushing reality. Despite Hekahete's valiant efforts, they did not have enough money. Manbo approached his teachers and the school administration, explaining his situation and pleading for more time or any form of assistance. While some teachers expressed sympathy, the bureaucratic system offered little flexibility. On the day the other students sat for their papers, Manbo watched from the sidelines, his heart heavy with a mix of sorrow and anger. The schoolyard buzzed with the excitement and nerves of students ready to prove themselves. But for Manbo, it was a day of profound loss. The opportunity he had worked so hard for, and that his mother had sacrificed so much for, was slipping through his fingers. The realization that he couldn't sit for his final papers was a bitter pill to swallow. It marked a turning point in Manbo's life, one that filled him with a sense of betrayal and disillusionment. He saw the system as unjust, a barrier that kept people like him trapped in an endless cycle of poverty. The dreams of university and a professional career seemed to vanish before his eyes, replaced by a bleak and uncertain future. Heikahete, devastated by the outcome, tried to console her son. She reminded him of his worth, his intelligence, and the potential that still lay within him. But for Manbo, the disappointment was too great. The missed opportunity felt like a condemnation, a sign that no matter how hard they tried, they could never escape their circumstances. This moment of profound loss and frustration became a catalyst for Manbo's subsequent choices. The bitterness that took root in his heart began to grow, overshadowing the values his mother had instilled in him. In the aftermath of his missed exams, Manbo found himself increasingly detached from the life he had once known. The optimism and drive that had defined his early years were overshadowed by a growing sense of bitterness and hopelessness. It was during this turbulent period that he met Ladi, a boy his age who would forever change the course of his life. Ladi was an enigmatic figure in the neighborhood. He moved with a confidence that bordered on arrogance, his swagger hinting at a life less ordinary. While most of the local youths saw him as a troublemaker, there was something about Ladi that intrigued Manbo. The two boys first crossed paths in a crowded market. Manbo, lost in thought, was wandering aimlessly when he noticed Ladi deftly slipping his hand into a merchant's pocket and emerging with a wad of cash. The act was so smooth, so seamless, that it took a moment for Manbo to process what he had just witnessed. Ladi caught Manbo's eye and flashed a knowing smile before disappearing into the throng of people. Curiosity got the better of Manbo, and he sought out Ladi in the days that followed. He found him loitering by a street corner, engaging in playful banter with a group of friends. Summoning his courage, Manbo approached him, eager to learn more about the boy who seemed to navigate life with such ease. "Hey, I saw what you did at the market," Manbo said, trying to sound casual. Ladi looked at him with a mixture of amusement and suspicion. "And what of it? You planning to rat me out?" "No," Manbo replied quickly. "I was just impressed." "How did you do it?" Ladi's eyes twinkled with mischief. "It's all about the sleight of hand and confidence, my friend. People only see what you want them to see." From that day on, a bond began to form between the two boys. Ladi took Manbo under his wing, introducing him to a world that was as exhilarating as it was dangerous. He taught Manbo the tricks of the trade, how to pickpocket without being noticed, how to blend into a crowd, and how to make a quick getaway. Manbo, eager to prove himself and driven by a desire to escape his circumstances, absorbed Ladi's lessons with surprising speed. The thrill of the robbery, the rush of adrenaline, and the promise of easy money were intoxicating. It wasn't long before the two became partners in crime, their escapades growing bolder and more ambitious with each success. Ladi's influence on Manbo extended beyond just teaching him the art of theft. He introduced him to a new way of thinking, a philosophy rooted in cynicism and self-reliance. "The world doesn't care about us, Manbo," Ladi would say. "If you want something, you take it. No one's going to give it to you." Manbo found himself nodding in agreement. The bitterness and frustration that had taken root in his heart was soothed by the camaraderie and shared purpose he found with Ladi. Together, they navigated the streets of Benin City, their names whispered in fear and admiration among the locals. Their partnership, however, was not without its challenges. As their crimes escalated, so did the risks. Close encounters with the law became more frequent, and the thrill of their exploits was tempered by the constant threat of capture. Yet, Ladi's confidence never wavered. He seemed to possess an uncanny ability to stay one step ahead, his instincts guiding them through even the most perilous situations. One evening, after a particularly successful robbery, the boys sat atop a dilapidated building, overlooking the city. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over the rooftops. Lardy leaned back, a satisfied grin on his face, while Manbo stared at the horizon, lost in thought. "What's on your mind, Manbo?" Lardy asked, breaking the silence. "You ever think about the future, Lardy?" Manbo replied. "What happens if we get caught?" Lardy shrugged. "You can't live your life in fear of what might happen. The future is uncertain, but right now, we've got everything we need. Freedom, money, and each other. That's more than most people can say." Manbo nodded, but a lingering doubt gnawed at him. He had found a new purpose with Lardy, a sense of belonging and excitement that had been missing from his life. Yet, he couldn't shake the feeling that their path was leading them towards an inevitable reckoning. Manbo's descent into a life of crime was swift and unrelenting. Under Lardy's tutelage, he quickly mastered the art of theft, and the pair's exploits grew increasingly daring. What began as petty pickpocketing soon escalated to more audacious robbery, each more thrilling and profitable than the last. Manbo, driven by a mixture of desperation and newfound empowerment, embraced his role with a fervor that surprised even Lardy. The first significant job they pulled off together was a nighttime raid on a local electronics store. Lardy had scoped out the place for weeks, noting the comings and goings of the staff, the security measures in place, and the best points of entry and exit. He shared his plan with Manbo, detailing every step with the precision of a seasoned strategist. "We'll go in through the back," Lardy explained, his voice barely a whisper in the dim light of a secluded alley. "I've already disabled the alarm system. We have a small window of time before the night guard makes his rounds. Stick to the plan, and we'll be out before anyone notices." Manbo nodded, his heart pounding with anticipation. The thrill of the robbery was intoxicating, a rush of adrenaline that drowned out the lingering doubts and fears. They moved with practiced stealth, slipping through the shadows and into the store. Within minutes, they had loaded their bags with expensive electronics and made their escape, disappearing into the night like phantoms. The success of that first major robbery was a turning point for Manbo. The financial rewards were immediate and substantial, a stark contrast to the poverty he had known all his life. For the first time, he felt a sense of control over his destiny, a feeling that fueled his desire for more. The streets of Benin City, once a backdrop of struggle and despair, now seemed to hold endless possibilities. Lardy, pleased with their success, encouraged Manbo to think bigger. "This is just the beginning, my friend," he said, a gleam of ambition in his eyes. "There are so many opportunities out there if you know where to look and have the guts to take them." Manbo's transformation was evident in his demeanor. The quiet, thoughtful boy who had once dreamed of a better future through education was now a confident, daring young man, unafraid to seize what he believed was rightfully his. His bond with Lardy deepened, forged through shared risk and reward. They became known in the underworld as a formidable duo, their names whispered in awe and fear among both peers and victims. However, with greater success came greater risks. The police, pressured by a growing public outcry, intensified their efforts to catch the elusive thieves terrorizing the city. Patrols were increased, and investigations were launched, making the streets of Benin more dangerous for Manbo and Lardy. Yet, the threat of capture only added to the thrill, pushing them to refine their techniques and stay one step ahead. The duo's bravado extended beyond their criminal activities. They began frequenting local bars and clubs, flaunting their newfound wealth. Manbo, once a quiet and reserved boy, now reveled in the attention and admiration of those around him. He bought flashy clothes, expensive jewelry, and treated his friends to lavish nights out, his pockets always full of cash. The more he indulged, the more distant his old life seemed. Hate, unaware of the true source of Manbo's sudden prosperity, was both relieved and concerned. She noticed the changes in her son, his confidence bordering on arrogance, and the growing gap between them. The boy who had once been her pride and joy now seemed like a stranger. Despite her misgivings, she tried to convince herself that perhaps fortune had finally smiled upon them. One evening, after another successful robbery, Manbo and Ladi sat on the rooftop of an abandoned building, surveying the city that had become their playground. The moon cast a pale glow over the rooftops, and the sounds of nightlife drifted up from the streets below. "What's next for us, Ladi?" Manbo asked, a hint of eagerness in his voice. Ladi leaned back, a satisfied grin on his face. "The sky's the limit, Manbo. We've proven we can handle anything. There's a big score I've been thinking about, something that could set us up for life. But it requires planning, patience, and nerves of steel." Manbo's eyes lit up with anticipation. "Tell me more." As Ladi outlined the details of their next big job, Manbo felt a surge of excitement mixed with a touch of trepidation. The path they were on was dangerous, the stakes higher than ever. But the promise of riches and the thrill of the robbery were too alluring to resist. One fateful night, Ladi proposed a robbery that would be their most ambitious yet, a high-end jewelry store in the heart of Benin City. The store was known for its strict security measures, but Ladi, with his characteristic confidence, had devised a plan to bypass them. Manbo listened intently as Ladi outlined the details, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and anxiety. "We'll strike at midnight," Ladi said, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. "The guards change shifts around then, and we'll have a small window to get in and out. I've got everything mapped out. Trust me, Manbo. This is going to be our biggest score yet." Manbo nodded, trusting in Ladi's instincts as he always had. They spent the next few days preparing meticulously, gathering equipment and rehearsing their plan. On the night of the robbery, they donned black clothing and masks, blending into the shadows as they made their way to the jewelry store. The operation began smoothly. Using a combination of skill and stealth, they bypassed the security systems and entered the store. The glittering jewels and precious stones filled their bags, the promise of unimaginable wealth fueling their determination. Just as they were about to make their exit, the sound of footsteps echoed through the store. "Someone's coming," Manbo whispered urgently. Ladi's eyes narrowed. "Stick to the plan. We're almost out." They moved quickly but silently towards the back exit, but fate had other plans. As they reached the door, it swung open, revealing a security guard who had returned unexpectedly. Panic flared in Manbo's chest, but Ladi reacted with lightning speed, drawing a concealed weapon and firing a warning shot. "Get down!" Ladi shouted, his voice a harsh whisper. The guard stumbled back, his eyes wide with fear, and Ladi seized the moment to push through the exit. Manbo followed, his heart racing as they fled into the night. The sound of distant sirens grew louder, and they knew they had to split up to evade capture. "Meet me at the usual spot," Ladi instructed as they parted ways. Manbo ran through the labyrinthine streets, his mind racing. He reached the agreed meeting point, a dilapidated warehouse on the outskirts of the city, only to find it empty. Minutes stretched into hours as he waited, anxiety gnawing at him. Just as dawn began to break, Ladi stumbled into the warehouse, his face pale and his body trembling. "Ladi, what happened?" Manbo rushed to his friend's side, helping him sit down. I think I'm cursed. Yes, I think I am cursed. Manbo, Lardy gasped, his voice weak. Ever since we took that job, something's been wrong. Manbo's heart sank. Lardy's face was covered in cold sweat, his eyes filled with an uncharacteristic fear. He described a series of strange occurrences, shadows that seemed to follow him, whispers in the night, and a pervasive sense of dread that he couldn't shake. Manbo tried to calm him, attributing it to the stress of their latest robbery, but deep down, he felt a growing unease. Over the next few days, Lardy's condition worsened. He grew increasingly paranoid, convinced that an unseen force was hunting him. Manbo watched helplessly as his friend, once so full of life and confidence, deteriorated before his eyes. Then, one evening, the unthinkable happened. Manbo arrived at Lardy's hideout to find the place in disarray. Furniture was overturned, and the walls were marked with frantic scribbles. In the center of the chaos lay Lardy, his lifeless body contorted in a final expression of terror. Manbo's heart pounded in his chest as he knelt beside his friend, his mind struggling to comprehend the scene before him. As he pieced together the events of that tragic night, Manbo was overcome with a sense of profound loss and guilt. Lardy, the friend who had introduced him to a life of crime, was gone, his death shrouded in mystery. Manbo couldn't shake the feeling that something supernatural had been at play, that Lardy's fears of a curse were not unfounded. The loss of Lardy marked a turning point for Manbo. The thrill of the robbery was now tainted with the memory of his friend's demise. He found himself questioning the path he had chosen, the path that had brought him wealth and notoriety but also profound sorrow. The camaraderie and excitement that had defined his relationship with Lardy were replaced by a haunting emptiness. Despite his grief, Manbo knew he had to press on. The streets of Benin City were unforgiving, and any sign of weakness could be exploited by rivals or the law. He vowed to honor Lardy's memory by continuing their work, but with a newfound caution and respect for the forces he didn't fully understand. In the wake of Lardy's death, Manbo's reputation as a formidable thief grew. He became more calculated, more ruthless, his heart hardened by loss. Yet, the Shadorian's fate lingered, a constant reminder of the dangers that lurked in the darkness. Manbo was now truly alone, navigating a world that seemed both thrilling and treacherous, determined to carve out his own destiny while haunted by the ghosts of his past. The death of Lardy left Manbo in a state of profound sorrow and confusion. Alone and more paranoid than ever, he felt the weight of his choices pressing heavily upon him. Lardy's mysterious demise had introduced Manbo to the possibility that their actions had stirred something beyond the physical world, a supernatural force that could not be outwitted or escaped through sheer skill alone. Determined to protect himself from any unseen threats, Manbo sought out the guidance of a powerful dibia, a traditional healer and spiritual leader known for his mystical abilities. The dibia, an elderly man with piercing eyes that seemed to see into one's soul, lived in a secluded compound on the outskirts of Benin City. His reputation was legendary. People whispered tales of his formidable powers and the charms he crafted, which were said to offer protection, luck, and invincibility. Manbo approached the dibia with a mixture of respect and desperation. He knelt before the old man, explaining his predicament and the fear that now gnawed at his heart. "Great dibia, I seek your help. My friend met a terrible fate, and I fear I may be next. Please, grant me protection from the forces that threaten my life." The dibia listened intently, his weathered face impassive. After a long silence, he spoke in a voice that was both commanding and soothing. "The path you walk is filled with danger, both seen and unseen. The spirits are restless, and they do not take kindly to those who disrupt the balance. However, I can offer you a charm that will shield you from harm, but it comes at a great cost. Manbo's eyes widened with hope. I am willing to pay any price. What must I do? The dibia led Manbo to a dimly lit room filled with the scent of burning herbs and the soft glow of candles. The walls were adorned with intricate symbols and talismans, each representing a different spiritual force. In the center of the room lay a large, wooden altar covered with various offerings: coins, beads, feathers, and bones. The dibia began to chant, his voice rising and falling in a rhythmic cadence. He moved with deliberate precision, selecting items from the altar and combining them in a small, ornate bag. As he worked, he explained the nature of the charm. This charm will make you invincible in your endeavors. It will cloak you from the eyes of those who seek to harm you and protect you from the wrath of the spirits. But remember, its power is not limitless. Use it wisely, and do not take its protection for granted. When the charm was complete, the dibia handed it to Manbo, instructing him to wear it around his neck at all times. The bag, though small and unassuming, seemed to pulse with a faint energy. Manbo felt a surge of confidence as he placed it over his head, the weight of the charm a comforting presence against his chest. In the days that followed, Manbo's confidence grew. The fear and paranoia that had plagued him began to dissipate, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose. He resumed his criminal activities with a newfound vigor, convinced of his invincibility. The charm seemed to work wonders. He evaded capture with ease, outwitted his adversaries, and carried out daring robberies with an almost supernatural efficiency. News of Manbo's exploits spread rapidly through Benin City. The Midnight King, as he was now called, became a figure of legend, a thief who seemed untouchable, a phantom who moved through the night with impunity. The more he succeeded, the more daring his robberies became. He targeted wealthy homes, high-end stores, and even ventured into neighboring cities, expanding his reign of terror. Yet, the charm's power came with a hidden cost. The more Manbo relied on it, the more he felt a strange disconnection from the world around him. He began to have vivid dreams and unsettling visions, moments where reality seemed to blur with the spiritual realm. One night, after a particularly successful robbery, Manbo experienced a vision that shook him to his core. In his dream, he stood before a towering figure, shrouded in shadows. The figure's eyes glowed with an eerie light, and its voice echoed in Manbo's mind. You have taken what is not yours and disturbed the balance. The charm protects you, but it also binds you. Remember the price you have agreed to pay. Manbo awoke in a cold sweat, the weight of the charm feeling heavier than ever. He tried to shake off the lingering sense of dread, but the vision remained etched in his mind. Despite his growing wealth and power, a part of him began to question the path he had chosen and the true cost of the protection he had sought. As the Midnight King, Manbo continued to rise, his exploits becoming ever more legendary. But the shadow of the charm and its mysterious power loomed over him, a constant reminder that the line between invincibility and vulnerability was thinner than he had ever imagined. The choices he made and the actions he took would ultimately determine his fate, as he navigated the treacherous path he had chosen, marked by both triumph and an ominous sense of impending doom.